We had trained for this mission, examined every potential problem, every SAM, surface to air missile, site, and every possible Iraqi response to dozens of hostile aircraft flying toward their forces, intent on killing people and breaking things. We assumed we were incapable of being surprised. That arrogance lasted until the first anti aircraft round came hurtling at us. Of all the surprises of a career in the Navy, the biggest one I experienced was the flash of terror that exploded in my body when my brain first registered the sight of the tracers reaching up for us. My hyperspeed, adrenaline fueled brain did the math quickly, and I realized each tracer round represented 8 to 10 rounds coming up, invisible to us. They appeared to shoot straight up in the air, then, as we got close, arc toward us, then past us. An optical illusion, of course, but I swear every tracer in the night sky seemed to be intelligent and on a mission to hit the intruder that Pat and I flew in. Fortunately, on that first night, none would find us. The first targets of Operation Desert Storm for VA-145 were the docks, patrol boats, and larger Iraqi naval vessels unfortunate enough to be in port when the war began. Pat and I had drawn a pretty straightforward mission: drop Rockeyes, cluster bombs, on the fuel depot of one of the dock complexes. Our intel briefing included a couple SAM sites we'd need to dodge, but not much more resistance. The anti-aircraft gunners wouldn't be expecting us, and since this night represented the opening salvos of the war, it would be their first opportunity to shoot at attacking aircraft, and except for those veterans of the decade-long Iran-Iraq war, they wouldn't have any experience shooting at live targets. By the time we had reached the target, our stomachs had settled down and our focus was tight on the job at hand. My head was in the boot, the rubber frame view screen I used to identify and select ground structures we were to drop on. I marked the oval-shaped fuel tanks our order specified, and though the gyros in the computer connected to my screen kept the orientation stable, I felt Pat roll Rustler 314 inverted to get his bombing sight on the target, so we both now worked upside down, hanging from our tightly cinched harnesses. "Pickle is hot," I advised, telling Pat the switch on his control stick was now live, and pushing the green button would launch the volleys of Rockeyes toward the target. "Pickle hot," he replied. My monitor showed our trajectory to be head-on, so I eased my head out of the boot and glanced up at Pat, his eyes fixed on his own targeting display, the lines telling him when to release the ordnance, moving toward each other steadily. I put my head back into the boot to finish watching the show. "Deploying," he said, and at the same time mashing down on the pickle 3 times in rapid succession, telling the weapon system to release the load of cluster bombs toward the target. As soon as Pat confirmed all the Rockeyes had dropped with no malfunctions, he slammed the control stick to the left, half rolling back to normal flight orientation, and firewalled the throttle while ducking the intruder's nose down to pick up a little more speed. We had dropped. It was time to get the hell out of Dodge, since we wanted to be well clear of any secondary explosions, of which there were a few. Well, actually there were a lot of them. The flashes of the fuel tanks exploding when the second wave of Rockeyes dropped through the breaches in the containers opened by the first wave of the cluster bombs looked like a massive violent thunderstorm had appeared out of nowhere. We, of course, didn't hear the explosions. They illuminated the night for miles. Target hit with secondaries would be our after-action report. Pat and I flew back to Ranger in near silence, both exhausted and humbled by what we'd done. For all his bluster and fiery rhetoric about kicking Iraqi asses, I could tell, like me, that Pat was starting the process of reconciling in his mind the knowledge we had probably ended scores, if not hundreds, of lives.